Welcome. I'm Bailey of, well, I used to say Farmer Bailey Plugs, but that doesn't really sum it up anymore because there's plugs and there's perennials and there's peonies, and now there's a whole range of woody plants. So I'm a Farmer Bailey, whatever you want to make your business work. That's what we're here to do. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with Peter Kolster, Robert-Jan's father, and he said that we were talking about some business things, and he said that our success is their success, and I have to say that the success of you, our growers, is Farmer Bailey's success and is also Kolster's success. We're all in this together, and it all starts with you. We are here to help you source the plants you need for your business, and also to help you understand them and succeed with them. So that's why we are here today. I'm really happy that Robert-Jan Kolster is joining us. As you might guess from his last name, Kolster is a family business. Robert-Jan, how many generations has your family been in the nursery business?
I'm the fourth generation, Bailey, so quite a long time here. Since 1945, we are up and running with this business here.
Excellent. And where are you located?
We're in Boskoop, which is if people it's famous for their nursery stock plants, and it's located actually between Rotterdam and Amsterdam.
I had the pleasure of first visiting Boskoop 29 years ago when I was a university student. I was in the Netherlands during tulip time, and it made such an impression on me. I think we took a little canal tour, and people were digging plants from the canals into their boats. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and I was so excited. I don't know if it was 6 or 7 years ago when I came to visit your nursery. It was so exciting to be back in that area, and I love that I'm there 2 or 3 times a year now. We're going to talk about a lot of plants today. Robert Jan's one of the owners of Kolster. He's also a cut flower expert, specifically in woody plants. I will say that Kolster breeds maybe traditionally woody plants, but also a full range of herbaceous perennials. And who knows where that stops. Your team are all enthusiastic plant people. I always learn something when I come to visit you, so it wouldn't surprise me. Really, nothing you would do would surprise me. Before I hand it over to you, I'll just say that we visited you back in November with some of our American growers and customers. And the feedback we got after visiting you was, well, we were in the Netherlands for about a week visiting all kinds of big greenhouses, and we went to the Aalsmeer auction. And most people said that Kolster was their favorite stop on the trip because what they saw with you is so relatable to what they do. Your products are perfectly situated to grow in a lot of different climates in America. Most of our customers grow on really small scale, but they might grow 100 or 200 different types of plants in the same space. So the big challenge was figuring out how to supply all these individual growers with the small amount that they need. And we figured it out. So I want to thank you for your cooperation with that. And then I'll hand it over to you. Robert, I will interrupt you on occasion if I have questions, but we'll save everyone else's questions until the very end. And if we don't get to everything, don't worry. We're always here to help you find answers.
All right. Thanks, Bailey. Thank you all guys for joining, and I'm very happy to have the invitation to this webinar. First time for me, but I really like to do it. And I will just give you a brief introduction of what this Kolster company, what we stand for. We actually started as a nursery stock business or nursery stock farm, and from the woody plant material, the traditional plants, what they grow in this area, and from there on, to cut the long story short, we started to get more people to our nursery they were interested in using some of those plants for cut flower purposes. And that was especially my dad's interest. He said, well, what kind of plants are more into the traditional assortment that we can use as a cut flower product? So we started to grow more of those products, and from those products we started breeding, because we wanted to get different colors, different varieties, better varieties, and so on. We started it was still all in the woody plants, so it was hydrangeas, it was hypericum, it was Ilex, it was rose hips, it was Snowberries, all those products we still have in the program, but at the end, program became much bigger. And later on, even we started to do perennials. So at the moment, we sometimes say our varieties or our assortment is maybe too big or too wide. On the other hand, it's also fun because that's like Bailey said, we are all a bit plant enthusiastic guys, so we like to try and we plant some plants there and there and there, and we follow them for a couple of years, and then we try to see if they work out or not. And if they're not working out, then we'll probably even let them for a couple of years on the nursery because they have something. So it's a bit out of the normal region of breeding companies, but yeah. So in that part, I think we are unique in the world. And today I will give you a short a presentation on some of the major products that we do. Of course, it's the evening, or in your case, the day is not long enough to do all the products tonight or today. But yeah, we picked a few products, and yeah, I'll try to show you some more information on those products.
Great. Robert, let me interrupt you for 1 second. For those people in the room who aren't that familiar with plant breeding, you get a wide range when you start making hybrids of different types of plants. You get a huge range from short to tall to different colors and different habits and bigger berries, smaller berries. And the market has been driven for, small, compact things for smaller gardens, things that ship more easily, more plants on a cart, more carts on a truck. But that's to the detriment of the cut flower grower sometimes, because the plants you might see in your local garden center are generally too short to use for cutting. So we do appreciate that when you have seen something that grows tall and fast and is full of berries, you think, hey, that might have another use besides the landscape market. You're kind of accidentally breeding for them at the same time. If you're breeding for a small pot plant, you may get something that is also really usable for cut flowers. And we appreciate you recognizing that and keeping them in circulation and helping us get access to them. As you mentioned, we could do an hour on every single crop that you're going to talk about today. Today, we're just going to do an overview of some of the plants that you helped bring to market. And I'm sure we won't touch on everything, but yeah, we're excited to hear what you're going to talk about. Thanks.
Just looking at, yeah. To start with the hydrangeas, it's a wide range we have in hydrangeas, but for the cut flower purposes, we do work with the paniculata and the macrophylla. There's a big difference between the varieties. I will try to explain today the difference between the varieties. Makes it a lot easier to grow them. And of course, on the picture you already see, there's a big difference in the shape of the flower, but there's also some major things to do it well in growing them. Paniculata, which is a very hardy plant, especially it's one of the easier hydrangeas, I think, to grow, because even if you cut the whole plant down or it freezes down, it will grow the next season again and flower on every stem. So major thing with this variety is that it flowers on 1-year-old shoots. So it makes it very important that you prune back every year after you harvested the stems that are still on the plant. You prune in the spring to, let's say, 10 to 15 centimeters from the ground. You don't have to really look at the eyes, etc. It's very easy. The plant will always grow from the wood. So it's a very hardy plant. We actually export it as a garden plant to Eastern Europe, to Ukraine, to countries where they have severe winters, and they also enjoy it a lot because it flowers every summer after severe winter, no problem. for cut flower purposes, there's not so many varieties that do the job as there are for garden plants. So the cut flower, a lot of the Hydrangea paniculatas don't have such a good vase life. So that's very important. So the right variety is important. For example, Magical Candle was one of the first that we thought, well, this is also good for cut flower purpose. And it has another advantage that it also goes to a classic stage. If you leave the stem, if you leave the flower on the plant, it gets to a sort of pink with a red tip. That depends a little bit on the climate and the area where you grow it, but it can get a really classic, nice color. What is important to get a good classic color is that the plant doesn't get too much wet. The flowers can get rain or whatever, but for example, a Dutch climate here, we have very much a change between wet, dawn, wet, rain, and then suddenly sunlight that can give some burns on the stem. So then we say, well, try to shade it if you want to perfect coloring in the autumn color. Give some shade when you have very intense sunlight or a lots of rain, etc. Or you can put a tunnel over it. The sides can be open, plastic tunnel. And that's maybe even the best idea. Then you keep the rain off. If you have a more drier climate, it's mostly not a big problem. So yeah, also very important is you can harvest all the flowers of the plant. You shouldn't have leave anything. You don't have to spare the plant like some other plants that you cut every stem you can sell or you need. And also the nice thing is what we mostly recommend is cut some of the stems out fresh. Then you make space in the crop to add the light around the other flowers that you leave on the plant, and you can stay those stems can stay on the plant to get a more classic stage. Yeah, that's about the Hydrangea paniculata, which is in my opinion one of the easiest hydrangeas to grow. You can't make much of a mistake. Just keep in mind that you always have in spring, you cut it down at 10 to 15 centimeters from the ground, fertilize it, and then it will flower. It will always flower normally. Here you see one of our clients. It was one of the biggest fields I've ever seen of paniculata, which is was for him a bit of it was a challenge to get every stem harvested, but yeah, a lot of those stems were also sold as in the classic stage. So he cut out some of the fresh ones and then leave some space, and also you can see that some of the flowers are still green, other ones are already in the right shape to harvest. But you can leave quite some stems if you give them some space to get into a classic stage. The macrophylla, that's a little bit more difficult. Doesn't really have to be very difficult, but there's a few things you have to keep in mind. If you cut most of the hydrangeas completely down, it doesn't really have to damage the plant, but it will cost you production for the next year. Some varieties don't produce flowers, some produce less. So the key thing, if you want to do a good job, would be to cut out the stems you need, leave enough wood or leave even smaller flowers on the plant, and keep that old wood as a base for the next year's production. Another key thing is actually that the best is to irrigate them. They do not like some water, especially when you are on sandy soils, etc. Best is to irrigate from underneath with drippers, so that you have as less water over the flower, because the flower can keep quite some water in itself, and with some sunburn it can give spots or burns on the flower. This is more the thing with a lighter colored fonts. So white is very difficult. It's more difficult because it's much more sensible for sunburn. The darker ones are much easier, as they are mostly stronger, and you don't see every dot on it. Also, the darker ones, they color more into the classic stage. So in this macrophylla, you also can get a lot of varieties with a very nice autumn color in it. So that's the same thing. You cut out some flowers to give some space to the others, maybe in a fresh stage, and the other ones you leave on the plant, and they will get into a, as we call it in Holland, a classic stage, which is an autumn color. And down within the pictures you see on the screen, you see some of the stages within the varieties. Sometimes if the climate is right and it doesn't get too cold too soon, you can get a real nice aubergine, dark colored flower on the red ones. It also depends on the summer, the autumn, and the area where you grow. If it's returning very quickly to a colder and you get frost, etc., then you have to get rid of the flowers earlier. You have to harvest the flowers earlier. Hydrangea, mostly in Holland, the professional growers, they produce it indoors in a greenhouse, heated or unheated. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that you can't grow hydrangea outside. It's only less. How do you say it? Yeah, it's less production. Sometimes you get a little bit less production, or the stems are a little bit shorter, but you can still do it. And I must say, some of the classic colors can be outdoors, can be the prettiest. So both is possible. Yeah, next sheet I will show you. This is an indoor crop of hydrangeas. Sometimes they also use you see the sticks in it, that's support nets. Depends a little bit. Most of the time when you leave enough wood on the plant, the stems are strong enough to support themselves. The paniculata doesn't need, in my opinion, it doesn't really need support nets. Only if you are in a very windy area, and then it can cause on the sides of the beds, it can cause breakdowns of stems, but you can also avoid that by keeping it next to the beds a line where you have a little bit of support. So you put a wire around it, and that supports the stems and prevent them from breaking off the plant. And that was the chapter of the hydrangeas. We will now continue to the next crop that I would like to talk about. It's a little bit of a specialty crop. It is known as a climbing plant, garden plant. Only a few varieties that are suitable for cut flower purposes, because they have to have a certain strength in the stem, and they shouldn't be too tall, too fast growing. So within the last couple of years, we had, together with a grower is supporting us a lot with this knowledge and his breeding as well. We found some of the varieties that were suitable also for cut flower. It is a bit of a more specialty crop. It's not very difficult, but it needs a little bit more attention. So very important is that when you get the plants, you plant them, make sure, of course, that they are planted properly, and you take care of them well, that they grow well. When they start growing, pinch them, so the plant will make a little bit more ground shoots. And then the most important is, as it's not a real climbing plant, but it's coming out of a breeding of climbers, so it needs support nets. So plant it on beds, and if you can use a few layers of support nets, it can help a lot. Here, sometimes the growers work, or in some of our clients do it professionally as a cut flower grower. They work up to sometimes 3 layers of support nets. It makes it a bit easier. So you start when you plant. That's the easiest. You plant already, and you put the nets already on the ground, so you can actually plant into the holes of the net. And then you can put 2 or 3 layers of nets on the ground. Once the plants start growing, you also bring up the nets together with the crop. The lowest net can be about 50 by 50 centimeters, and the top level can be a bit wider. So to avoid that the plant has a little bit of a more shape for the flower in the top. Yeah, the flowers can be cut. It's always a bit half open, half closed. So the picture is what is shown on the screen is actually a very good shape of a stage of harvesting. But if you want to harvest it more open, or you want to harvest it a bit more close, it's also fine. But mostly this is the way. So it's a few flowers open, few flowers closed, a few in the middle, because one shoot has most of the time more flowers. Also, the same as with the hydrangeas. I didn't mention it in the earlier part, but always add some. In Holland it's different, of course, than in the United States. Here we bring flowers to the flower auction, and the auction has set a program or set to a post-harvest treatment that you are obliged to use. In the United States, probably you will have not all those chemicals available, but you will have to have at least add a chloral tablet to every water or bucket and use clear water. But most also would be very good if you use something like Chrysal. The hydrangea, they have good Chrysal for it. Clematis, they have something similar, but you will need something to feed the flower. But most important is that you have a clear water and put something in the water. It's for all the flowers but it's especially also for woody plants. Make sure that you have something that keeps the water clear, like chloral. Yeah, and otherwise you can't keep any vase life. But most of the growers would know, of course. But clear water and clear water with post-harvest treatment is very important. That's
Robert-Jan, let me
yeah.
The great part about these type of clematis that maybe people haven't seen is they don't grab on to the support. So that was the whole purpose of the breeding. They use a species that doesn't, they call it a bush type clematis, so it doesn't actually climb. They cross it with the climbing types to get a bigger flower.
Yep.
But that trait of not grabbing onto each other has been passed on to the offspring here. So that's why you can grow them in netting. You don't have to untangle them. You're not going to break them when you harvest. I grew very similar hybrids in Vermont. They were fully hardy, even up there with negative 35-degree winters. And good point on the post-harvest care. We do have Chrysal products in America. We call them the Gerbera tablets usually, but those are the chlorine tabs. And certainly just a general holding solution, which has some sugar and some antibacterial in the water, is a great idea for almost everything. But particularly something like Clematis, because it lasts a really long time, and those buds will keep opening, especially if they have the sugars and the carbohydrates to keep developing.
Yep. Yeah, that's so very, very important. Also, one thing I forgot about the hydrangea was that in the classic stage, when the flowers are more into the autumn color or the classic stage, phase life is actually much better than as a fresh flower, and you can easily also put the flower into a vase and then just stop at the end, stop adding fresh water into the vase, and then the foliage will dry out. You take them out, and then you have your own dry flowered hydrangea, which is not very difficult to do it this way. It's also nice, and you have much more time to work with your flowers. So that's with the hydrangea and the clematis. We'll go on to the next crop. It's actually one of my favorites, I must say. I really like it, especially the flowering ones. There's a big difference between some of the varieties. Cotinus is known for, especially like royal purple. Some people might know it. It's a very nice variety with dark foliage. We used to sell that in the past as well. From our nursery stock origin, we used to grow the royal purple, and we found out it is a very nice cut flower cut foliage product, but it grew quite tall and it grew a bit curvy, and that's straight stems are much more in demand. So also there we started breeding in Cotinus. We we found out that we could find a variety which has straight stems, etc., etc. I'll come on with the other varieties later on. A few things is very important on Cotinus. It's only a few things, but it's very, very important. It is a very easy crop in the sense it doesn't have much problems with diseases. I haven't seen aphids in it. I haven't seen any fungus in it besides verticillium. And verticillium is a strange thing. I don't know if any of you know. It's also fungus. It's something that occurs a lot in the ground. For we know it here in Holland a lot from potato history land. It can be when potatoes have been cropped there. It can be 20 years ago. It can be 30 years ago. But especially when it was intense, so a few times every year. Or strawberry. I also learned that can be the thing. Then the fungus is in the ground, and 99% of the crops or the shrubs are having no problem with it. So you would mention anything, but for Cotinus, it blocks the veins of the plant, which cause not. It seems like the plant is dying. But most of the time, the base of the plant doesn't die, but it makes a block in the vein. So above that, the stems die. They dry out. And this for example, if you have a field of Cotinus, you plant 20 plants, then you always can have occasionally 1 or 2 plants that do a little bit fading in the summer. That doesn't have to mean that you have to get rid of the plant. It's not dangerous. The plant can be there again next year. If it's really severe, then it can really die from it. But most of the time, the plant will grow back from it the next year. Most of the time, also, it occurs when the plant is not happy. So the plant has not the right soil. It is an extreme hot summer, or it is extreme wet weather, or everything that makes the plant feel bad. Then you have more of this problem on that year. So make sure the plant is on, the fertilizer regime is right. Make sure the drainage is right. Make sure that all the things you can do by yourself makes it easier. Also helps out to make to give the land a good balance of good fungus, good microorganisms that helps to avoid these problems. The only thing is, if you really plant it on a piece of land that for ages has been cropped within potatoes or whatever, it's quite sure you have 50% or 40% of this problem, or even more. So make sure, if you have the chance to choose within the country of the fields where you plant it, and you can have a good history view on the land that you're looking at, then it will help a lot. So that is one of the major things. And for the rest, it's quite hardy. And it's on the right soil, it can get very old even as a cut flower. So we have seen fields from 20, 30 years old still producing the foliage, which is even in shrubs, it's quite extraordinary. So if the plant has the right soil, if it's doing well, it can give you a long service on flowering. Yeah. So the most common one is the one that gives just normal the foliage. This is the one that we bred from the Royal Purple species. So it doesn't have the curvy stems. It has straight stems. It has intense color. It is not evergreen. So make sure that if you are in a colder area, harvest it before it starts freezing, because then the foliage starts to drop. Every time after harvest or after winter, you prune it back about 20 centimeters from the ground, and then it starts shooting again. What is very important with the harvesting. You can harvest over a longer period, over quite a long period, depending when the frost starts to fall in autumn or in fall. Then you start to stop because the foliage starts to drop. But when the plant is really growing, the vase life is not so good. So what is a tip from our side is that when you harvest, don't harvest all the stems at once. You'll always see in a plant that some of the stems have a closed tip. So on the picture on the screen, it's not the ideal stage. It's quite okay, but you see that the growing tip is still there. It's not very soft, but there is always a stage that is almost closed. And there can be stems around it that are growing. So you harvest the stems that are in stop or in a pause of growing. It gives you a much better vase life. Also, the further you get from summertime, so the more into fall or between summer and fall, the better the vase life is, because the stems get more sturdy, more stronger, and they are not growing so fast. So sometimes you also see that growers do harvest a lot of Cotinus in Holland, let's say in August, but I'm not a big fan of it, because most of the time that period it's warm. The plant is also struggling with growing, evaporating, etc., etc. So it's not the ideal stage. Funny thing is that sometimes even in June, July, that can also be a good stage, because then also you have a few stems that are not very fast growing, and then sometimes growers also pick out some of the shoots already. So if you play a little bit with it, you will see that you have a long window of harvesting. Also important is Cotinus to do the right post-harvest treatment. If you have a cold store, it helps when you pick the flowers, or in this case, the foliage. When you pick the foliage, hold them in water and let them take your post-harvest treatment in a cold store with, let's say, we do it in Europe in Celsius, but about 3 to 4, 5 degrees of Celsius would be ideal. But if it's a bit warmer, it's also okay. If you don't have a cold store, try to keep it on a darker, colder space, that it can have some time to take on the water. And ideal situation is always cut in the morning, not at the end of the day when the plant is having a hard day, and then also after we get used to putting on water. So we always try to advise to growers, when you have the chance, harvest before lunchtime and not after lunchtime. It helps a lot in the vase life. All right, this was just the foliage. Now we come to the ones that are actually one of my favorite crops within the range that we have. I think that in English, or they call it also Smokebush or something like that.
I like the Dutch word for it better.
The Dutch word.
Yeah, the Dutch name for this plant I like better than Smokebush. Can you tell us what that is?
Help me out. That was
Like the wig tree or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I in Dutch, wig tree, pruikenboom. Yeah, that's true. I know. I almost forgot, but if you translate it, it's the wig tree. Yes, yeah. Also,
I think I might need that.
Yeah, but I must say it can be sometimes when you just harvest, it can be a bit sticky. It's over after it, but also it looks a little bit like sugar. How do you call it? The candy thing that you have on the.
We call it cotton candy, or
yes,
candy
yes,
floss
that
in
was
the
the word I
UK.
was looking for. Well, there's a few varieties in it. We have Cotinus Magical Red and Green Fountain. Green Fountain we already had. That's an older variety. Green foliage, and then the flowers, and the flowers also green with when you leave it, it's getting more red. And the Cotinus Magical Red Fountain, I like it a lot because it has the benefit that it has the red foliage, like the one that you got for the foliage, but it also has the benefit that it has the flowers, and they are also red. Important is to know that these plants produce the flowers on the old wood. So that means that the wood, let me say it like this: if you harvest them if you would prune them back after winter, like you do with the foliage ones, you will have no flowers. So you always have to end in the winter with in the end of the season, you have to end with stems on it. That makes also important that the time when you harvest it makes also a lot of difference in the length you would achieve for the next season. In other words, the earlier you harvest your flower, the longer the plant has to get a new stem on the plant, which makes the stem length longer. In Holland, in Europe, especially in Holland with that auction system that we have, the longer the stem is very crazy, because nobody sells flower arrangements of a meter long, but the longer the flower stems is, the better the price on the auction. And I think it comes from that buyers would know that, oh, the longer stems is as heavy as quality, so they will cut down part also, but 60 centimeters brings less money than 80 centimeters. So and also we're working with day length. So in here you see, it depends also where you're located, of course, but the more you are towards the longest day or after the longest day, 21 of June, the more it makes a difference in the growing. So I would always advise growers, make advantage of it has a long harvesting period, and you can harvest all the plant at once. So you don't have to leave any stems. It's very easy. So your harvest is also your pruning. That makes it very easy crop. So even the new shoots are coming. I would advise just cut everything. Also the new shoots, then you start with an even square, and you still start at 0, and then the plant brings all its stems at once. But for example, your first flowers are ready to harvest, let's say in mid-June, then you would easily have 3 to 4 weeks, maybe even longer, to cut the whole field. So it gives you a very long window of harvesting. But if you are 4 weeks behind, it's a month. So it's a month, and also the days get shorter. So you will lose 20 to 30, maybe 40 centimeters, depending on where you are and what growing season you have for the next year. So always make sure that later harvest, it will cost you a little bit of length. Also, the one that you harvested the last, next year, try to harvest those the first, so that you give the plant a little bit of time between that. Not always the last plant is the last one next year as well, because then you always get shorter. Cotinus can last over a very long period if the plant is happy again. If you do treat it well, 20, 30 years. I have seen with a grower in Holland. He showed me this year his picture of his field he was cropping of Cotinus Green Fountain, and he showed me a picture of the year when he planted it. It was more than 20 years ago, and he said, "Well, this was a nice investment. He was 20 years already harvesting from the same crop." So I said to him, "Well, we sold it cheap to you, because." Yeah, but it's just fun. I like to see that he was so happy with it over 20 years, and it still produces quite heavy shoots. Major thing with Cotinus Red Fountain and Green Fountain is frost at night in spring. So the other Cotinus, it doesn't have to. You don't worry about it, because you start from 0. You cut it down, plant starts sprouting out. But with Cotinus Red Fountain, Green Fountain, the plant itself, so the wood itself is quite hardy. But when the plant starts sprouting out and the shoots start to grow on the stem, if in that stage you get frost at night, so we have that often in springtime, it can cause you flowers. It can cost you flowers, because when those buds are really freezing off, then most of the time they don't flower, or they flower less. So it's very rare that you have no flowers at all. But for example, if a stem would have normally 4 or 5 flower shoots on the stem, so you have a big head of flowers, then you might end up with 2 or 3. You can prevent that by doing like the same as doing apples. Start irrigating, start watering the stems when the frost, just before it starts the freezing point, and keep on watering them until the ice is off the plant. So it's all very important. You have to start just before freezing and stop until the ice is from the plant. Then you have the process of getting from water into ice is just making a little bit of temperature, of heat, not heat, but it's making it a little bit warmer so that the shoot is prevented from frost. If that is difficult and you don't have the right irrigation, there's another option is to in the evening or try to put as much possible water on the ground, or as much possible make the ground wet. A wetter soil is less less sensitive to frost than a dry soil. That's a tip that I can give. Other options would be nets above it. That makes it all very difficult. So there's years here that we don't have any problems at all, but it's just a few. It's just maybe one window of a week or a few days that it's the right stage for damage. So it doesn't really have to be a massive problem, but if you have anything and you have a possibility to irrigate them in that period, and you are in an area that you are having sometimes night frost, it's something you should think about.
That's a good point, John. We'll Felicia, let's write a blog post about this technique. You see, definitely see it in fruit orchards. I think even I saw it some places in America this week are having like peaches that are very susceptible to these kind of freezes. You see cut flower growers doing it a lot in the autumn with their dahlias when they want, they might have 1 or 2 cold nights, and if they can get through that, then you may get 3 more weeks of harvest. So that'll be a good resource for us to have on our website. Thanks for that reminder. And specifically for this Cotinus, if you can save those buds on a couple of cold nights, you can save your harvest and save your profit for the year. So good tips.
Yeah, it will come back as well, and the Ilex will come back to that later. But it's something the Ilex is even maybe it's a bit more common there to use this technique. But it's the same technique that growers of what, like Bailey said, from apple growers or etc. It's the same sprayers. It doesn't really have to be a lot of water. It's just that you put some water on it and it keeps continuously rotating. That every time it gets some new water on it. That's a technique to get it to prevent it. But so it doesn't. If you have to only for the night frost, it doesn't really give so much water. It's just enough to prevent the flower buds or the buds. Another option would be the next sheet. Sorry, these are some pictures of how they harvested and how and what stage. It looks like clouds almost. On the right hand, you see a trolley that is ready to the auction. It's always in here. It's about June that they look like this. Yeah. Other option for growers that have that do like to grow Cotinus, but they don't feel so well on the night frost or the irrigation or the etc. You could also choose the Cotinus Magical Torch, or you can combine it with the other ones. The nice thing is that Cotinus Magical Torch is flowering just after the other ones are finished. It does have the same flower, but it has no spray flower. So like it's one stem with one flower on it instead of the red fountain with a head of flowers. Growers in Holland are sometimes happy with that because it gives them less transport costs. So there's more flowers on the stem, and it's also a little bit more easy to handle. On the other end, the other one is more impressive, I think, the red fountain and the green fountain, because you with one stick or one stem, you almost have a flower arrangement in your hand. The nice thing with the Magical Torch, which is quite unique, I think, because it flowers every year on almost every stem on New Year wood. So that makes it easier for you. This is actually the same as you grow the cut foliage variety. You just cut down the plant after harvest. Or sorry, not after harvest, but you cut down the plant whatever you harvest from it, and then you leave what is on the plant. After winter, you prune it back, again, 20 centimeters from the ground, fertilize it, water it, and the plants start making the first flowers, I think, depending on where you're located, from June on. And it goes until October, depending on, sometimes it gets too cold here, but most of the time October it starts to get cold at night here, and then the flowering stops or the flowers get damaged by frost, etc. We see also that growers grow it next to the other varieties, because once the red fountain or green fountain is finished, maybe a small gap, and then this one starts to grow, to flower. And this one gives the flowers much more spread over the season. So every stem is on different time of harvest. So you just walk through it over a couple of weeks, months even. And there's also not really a hurry on the flower. For example, if your flower is ready on the plant on Friday, and you have other plants for the weekend, you'll just start harvesting Monday or Tuesday. That's one of the benefits of this product. We're talking about a flower, but it doesn't have the disadvantage of a flower plant that you always have to harvest exactly at the same time, at the same moment. Otherwise, you're too late, and this gives you less stress. And it's also quite easy to handle. I think on the next sheet, I have some pictures. Yeah, then you can see the difference in the plant. On the left hand and the middle center picture, you see that there's different stages on the plant. There are stems that are not even making a flower, but they will come. And there are stems already ready to pick. On the right hand, it's the ultimate. Yeah, it's the last stage of harvesting. If you wait even longer, then the color gets paler. I don't like it then that much anymore, but it's from intense to, and then it gets paler, and then I think you should be harvesting it. But so it gives you a long range, and also you see the plant on the left hand. It's one plant, and it's a row behind it, but you can see one plant can easily produce 40 stems, 35-40 stems if it's in a complete full mature grow. So it's a very productive plant. Some tips I can give you: if you plant these crops, plant it in rows or double rows. It makes it easier to harvest. Otherwise, you walk through the crop and you break stems, etc., etc. So, for example, the red fountain and green fountain, you cut yourself into the crop as you cut all the stems at once. So you harvest a plant all at once, and then you have no problem entering the field. This one you have to pick the right stems at the right time. So growing it by row or double rows or beds, but make sure you make enough space, because you see already on the picture, it's a big plant. It gets quite wide, can get over 1 meter wide if you give it the space. So also make sure you have some space to walk and to transport your flowers from the field. That's the Cotinus.
Thanks for all that information. This was the first year that Magical Torch has been available in America, and it's still a new variety in general. I think we've ordered quite a lot more for next year, so if you missed out on it this year, stay tuned. We'll have that in better supply next season. But really great tips, because you could have one row that's just for foliage, one row that's for early summer flowers, and then one row that's for late season flowers. Just by planning your variety selection.
And also, funny thing is, but it's also something if you're plant fanatic or plant geek, whatever how you say it, you can also play with the plant a bit. Cotinus Magical Torch, you can do the same trick as with red fountain and green fountain. So you can also leave some of the stems that you didn't harvest or didn't make it to flower for next year, and they will do the job in a spray. Red fountain and green fountain, I wouldn't recommend it, because they don't flower on 1-year-old wood. So Magical Torch, you can do both. On the other hand, when you leave stems on it, like on the old wood, you will start earlier with harvesting, but it also takes longer before the plant is making new shoots. So but something it's fun to play with. It's just see whatever. You can always leave some stems on the plant. You can do both. You can say 50% of the plant new shoots, 50% you leave old stems. Magical Torch is a really fun plant. It gives you quite some opportunities over a very long period to harvest. Yep.
Last thing before we move on, Magical Torch would be great if you live in the very northern parts of America. Sometimes just the cold of winter will kill the flower bud, but it won't kill the plant for some of the older varieties. In the case of Magical Torch, it's blooming on new wood anyway, so doesn't matter if you get that really cold spell in the winter that might kill the flower bud. These are going to produce their buds after things start growing in spring anyway. So I think really nice advancement, and I'm excited to see more people succeed with Magical Torch.
Yep. Thanks, Bailey. Now we get to Ilex verticillata, which is very nice crop as well. Also, for sure, one of my favorites in our program still. Also because I like. There's some things you have to do for it's not very difficult, but you have to do a few things. And you can also see that putting extra effort in this crop will reward you with a better quality than your competitor or than the other growers. What is the key things with this crop? Very important. There's a few things that are totally different than other crops, but first of them is that these plants are giving flowers or actually berries on 2-year-old wood. So it means that if you have a plant and you harvest them completely down, it will not give you a harvest next year. It will give you the year after it. So let's say even and uneven years, you have to put, let's say differently, plant a year in the even and in the uneven years, so that you have 2 fields or two rows or whatever. Then you have always something to harvest. It takes 3 years to have your first harvest from a young liner. That might be long compared to if you plant some of the other products, plugs or etc. On the other hand, I have seen plants from 60 years old still producing, so it's worth the effort to wait and to see what happens. And every time you harvest it, it gives a little bit more stems. So it's worthwhile the wait or the time you have to wait for to harvest it maybe, but it will reward you over a very long period of harvesting. Also very important to tell, and to many of you would know maybe, that Ilex is female and male plants. The female plants carry the berries or produce the berries, but not without the pollination of the male plants. So 10% of the male plants are required over the field to pollinate. You can even do a little bit less than 10%. So if you say, well, I have a few male plants died, you shouldn't go less than 5%, but try to stay about 10 to 7%. You should be safe there. Spread them all over your field, which is important. And also a very important thing on the Ilex is it likes an acid soil. So it's a plant that has it's getting a little bit problematic if your pH is very much higher than 6.2, 6.3. If so, and you still want to grow it, make a bigger hole, a plant hole, and mix some peat in it. And don't plant it completely in peat. Mix it in with the original soil. So that's mostly the best to do. Or raise the beds a bit with a lower pH soil, peat soil. Ilex plants grow quite. The root is very narrow. It's how you say it. It's very intense root system, and they try to grow a little bit onto the surface, and therefore they are more sensitive to drier periods, drier climates, and we advise actually to have a irrigation system or to irrigate them regularly, especially in the year that the plant has to produce berries. In the growing year, if the plant is not getting its irrigation properly, it will result in shorter stems. That's on your own. It doesn't really have to cost you production, but costs you only length. But in the year that they have to produce the berries, around the pollination time, it's already very important that the plant is getting enough water. And some areas we even advise to do that on a regular basis, sometimes even on a daily basis, but let's say a few times a week for sure. But the pollination is already a very important thing. If the pollen is moisty, it sticks better to the bees. It works all better. The flowers are more attractive. So already before flowering, you should be all right. Should be okay with your level of water. And then during the period of the pollination, when the berries start to grow, what's in the berry? It's all water actually. So the more water you add to the plant, the bigger the berries are. There's a few things also, fruit tricks you can also do. See the berry as a balloon, and potassium you can make the balloon bigger. But if your balloon is too thin, it will crack earlier, it will blast. So there you can play a little bit. Yeah, it's more technical now, but if you add some extra calcium, you can spray it. It's the same as an apple grower would use to spray on the apples to make the skin a little bit thicker. And then you would, in the year that you grow berries, you don't have too much length. You don't need so much nitrogen. You give it just a little bit more potassium than you would normally do. And that together with your irrigation, it can result in bigger berries and better quality. What is also important is that the berries are very attractive to birds, but they mostly start eating them when it's towards fall. So then the foliage of the ilex starts to drop. The berries get more intense color. Also, because of they're not between the foliage anymore, the birds would see them more. So that's something to do to make your measurements to it or to do something against it. There's a few things which you can do, or actually two. One is netting them. I have some pictures on the next screens to show it. It was done a lot. Yeah, there's more than a few things to do, but netting was something that they do. You put nets over not directly over the plants, because the birds will sit on the nets and start eating the berries, but a little bit raised. Other option would be to scare the birds away with we have it here, some of the birds of prey that are like almost real, but they are not, and they are flying on the wind, and they are in the field, and that works normally quite a while. But at the end, birds start to see that it's not real, and then they still start to eat it. Here also we have now the grower, the bigger growers, they use with a laser system, which is a laser dot, but you don't see, but it goes really fast over the field, and birds don't like it, and they stay out of the field. But the easiest thing, and I try to tell you how to do it in brief, in short nutshell. But the easiest thing, as that's a lot of growers do, is harvest them before the birds are keen on it. So that means that you harvest the stems with foliage, and the foliage, and you put them, we call it sweating them. So you bring them to a barn, or you can even do it outside. Then you will make piles. So you stack them onto each other. Make sure that they are moisty. So ideal would be in the morning with the dawn on it, or after a rainy day, or in a rainy day if you want to work outside in the rain. It helps a lot. It helps. But otherwise, if you don't want to do it, you harvest them, put it on a piece of plastic, irrigate them or water them. Not just moisture is enough. So you just have to do it very. If they're moisture is enough, they don't have to put don't have to put them in a pile of water. Put another layer over another layer, another layer. Then you will work towards about 60 to 80 centimeters high. So it's about table high or whatever. And then you close the plastic. So you put it, try to work. It's not completely, it doesn't have to be airtight, but I said almost airtight. So we try to avoid holes in the plastic, etc., but it doesn't have to be completely airtight. Then you let it sweat, as we say, for, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks. In Holland, we start to do that from September on. September will make you, will mean that you have a sweating period of at least 3 weeks. When you do it later on, it gets shorter because the foliage is already less on the plant. After you open the plastic after a couple of weeks, you shake the stems and you see the foliage dropping off. If they're not dropping off, it's too early, or you've kept it too dry, or you have lost water on it. So irrigate it a bit, close it down. Sometimes it helps if you put something on it with a little bit of pressure, so not stones or etc., but just some heavy stems. Or sometimes what we do is to put the stems of the male plants who don't do anything. They don't carry berries, but you still have to prune them. You take some of the stems of the male plants, put it on top of the piles, and then close it so it puts some pressure on the stems. And then it's a lot of growers find this a bit scary to do because it's they think they will damage it, and at the end most of the time they say, well, it wasn't so difficult. It isn't so difficult, but it's a few things. So when it's just plastic also on the ground, because if the plastic is not on the ground, if you put it on concrete or sand or whatever, the water goes into it and then you lose it and you get a dry pile of foliage. It's totally the wrong way. So make sure that you start already on a piece of plastic, and then irrigate, make it moisty, and then close it. Some growers do it even outdoors. It's also no problem if you don't have enough space. The ideal thing is if you do it indoor, close to the area where you work with your stems. In the winter time, the days are shorter. You have already the stems inside. If you want to work in the morning, you put on the light, you have the stems already next to your table, grading them, etc. It's a nice thing. In the wintertime, you don't have to go outside anymore. You have your stems already inside. Some growers do it even on pallets. The larger scale growers, they do it on pallets or on trolleys, and then they can transport it while they are processing it. When you do it outside, it's okay, but avoid using transparent plastic or black plastic when you start early in the time. Why? Because the sun will burn more intense on plastic that is transparent or black, and it gets too hot. So even if you don't have white plastic, you can still use that plastic, but cover it. So cover it with some other stems on it, or something that blocks the sun on the black plastic or on the transparent plastic. That's very important. But I'm quite fond of using the sweating system because you have already the stems already harvested, and you have them somewhere where you can work with it easily. Okay.
Great advice. These are tips that only someone like you who's been working with this crop for so many years can share. You don't read this in books, so I hope everyone's listening. We'll add this to our growing guide for Ilex verticillata. I used to grow this in Vermont, in the north. Generally, it was naturally defoliated by the time I needed to harvest, and birds weren't a big problem. It's not their favorite berry, but if there's nothing else around, they will go for it. If you're a little further south, or if you're just, you want to hit a certain market, for instance, the yellow and the orange varieties, after American Thanksgiving, it's full Christmas. Nobody wants to see orange or yellow. So you really want to start getting those to market by the end of October. so you can, enjoy that kind of, November is all about orange and yellow. So just to make sure that they are ready in time, you can certainly harvest them early and sweat them like Robert-Jan has said. I guess we'll prepare some more information on this technique, but thanks for sharing all this. This is really exciting for me, and I think everyone else as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think on the next slide, we have some pictures of this. On the left hand, you see it's a bit of an old picture, but it's the sweating. It's ready. So you see that the guy is pulling out the stems, and the foliage is behind, and the stems are still in good shape. On the right hand side, you see if you don't want to use this and you want to use the nets. This is how we did it. It's one of our fields, and we don't have that field anymore, but it was one of our fields. You see that the poles are, and there are cables on top of it. They are all there all the year round. Some growers even use those poles to fix their irrigation on top. But you can put the nets over those poles, and the disadvantage is that you have 2-year-long stems in the field for a couple of weeks every 2 years netting. Also problem it can be in an area, if you are in an area where there's a lot of wildlife. We hear sometimes that rabbits or similar animals like to go into the crop, or I don't know, they don't do so much damage in the crop, but they eat holes in the nets, and then the birds will enter, and that's also a problem. So yeah, sometimes then you have to put the lower area with an extra net of fence or whatever. But yeah, those are the things I wanted to show you. I hope I explained it a bit, because we're in a webinar. It seems maybe a bit difficult, but it really isn't that difficult. That sweating process isn't that difficult. You can't do so much wrong, because if they are not letting go of the foliage, you probably were too early. Just close it again and look after it a couple of weeks later, or maybe a week or 2 weeks. The key thing is that not too dry, definitely not too wet as well, but too wet is less problematic than too dry. And that they are pressing a little bit on each other. It's the system of when you put a big bunch of foliage on top of each other in the autumn, and then you dig it open, and you also feel temperature into it. It's a natural process that you want to achieve in this system. So yeah, that's the Ilex verticillata. And here you see some of the varieties we have. Traditionally, it was red. We bred also in the red ones to get better varieties like Amaranth, Crimson. In the orange, we have Daydream, which is a very nice color for. Here we sell it a lot with in October. It's a bit of the Halloween, thanks to American. We have also Halloween now, and we sell in that period good amounts of orange and yellow. Red is more classic ones. Some countries, for example, Italy, we sell quite a lot of it of Ilex to Italy. All they want is red. In Holland, the growers want all the colors. They see the yellow and the orange for the October period, October, early November. They don't see it as a Christmas product, and the red one is for Christmas, and that started to sell from November on. So you can actually create a different market with the orange one and the yellow one as well. It is a nice crop. You have to it takes some patience to have a full grown crop. On the other hand, if you invest in it, you have it for a longer period. You probably, before you retire, you don't have to replace them anymore. I'm quite sure, because I never seen somebody replacing an older plant of Ilex. Most of the time, they last longer than the grower retires before the grower retires. So yeah.
Thanks for that. So the Ilex is native to North America. You see it driving around sometimes. it's always in a wet area. It's a wetland plant, often right beside standing water or where the roots can reach standing water. So that's why when Robert-Jan was talking about the water needs, especially when it's trying to fruit, it's because it's just accustomed to being in a wet area. So I would recommend putting this in your, if you have a low spot in your field that's very damp, as long as it is acidic, it should be fine to put it there. If you have a year of a lot of drought, make sure that your Ilex is, getting its irrigation. But it might be a real benefit. You can grow this where you might grow willows or, some of the red-stemmed cornus. But keep it damp and you'll be happy. They're really easy once they get established.
Yeah. One more tip for the enthusiastic growers that want to trial a bit. If you really want to go to a major keen Ilex with a very nice shape, try or experiment a bit with root pruning. Most of the growers in Holland, they do use root pruning in the second year. So if we look at the pictures, you see that the main stem in the center, that's the stem that's formed in the first year. And the side shoots that you see, those where the berries are on, is the shoot that is formed in the second year. Key thing is that those center shoots that's formed in the first year had to do a long way to reach 80 to 100 centimeters length, maybe 120. So you give a good fertilizer in that year because the plant is cut down completely. You fertilize it. You try to reach a nice length and a nice healthy crop. Second year, actually, all it has to do is make that side shoot. That's all it has to do because you already have a new field for the other side. So if you fertilize it too much, or actually let's say if you give too much fertilizer in the form of nitrogen, what the plant will do is make large side shoots. We don't want that. We want actually to have the last berry at the top of the tip of the shoot. So you can achieve that by not spoiling them with nitrogen. Some growers even don't give any nitrogen in the second year. They only work with potassium, with calcium, with some of the other elements. But they also do something with the root pruning. And when that is done, is between the first and the second year in the winter period. That makes it more difficult for growers that are in an area that are all winter in the ice or in snow, because in that areas you can also grow Ilex, but then it's probably not possible. You have to do it very early. But here we do it, let's say, after the growers have harvested their Ilex, they start root pruning their other field by putting with a shovel just a few sticks, a few steps in the ground, sticks in the ground, just to produce some of the roots. So you leave quite a nice root ball, but you just bully the plant a bit, not too much. And the more peaty the soil you have, so the more the harder you can treat it, I think. But try it first with a few hits, a few cuts, and that makes it more difficult when you did the root pruning. Sorry, you have made the plant a little bit more vulnerable to getting too dry in the summertime. Why? Because it has not much a full connection with the other ground again, because you cut some of the key roots. And you don't cut really big roots. If you do that every second year, you don't let the plant establish big roots. So you only cut thin hair roots, as we say, a little bit bigger than that. But so you have to be very, very, very careful if you do that, especially when you do it properly, so heavy. If you do it severe, then you have to irrigate very strong. I would say that you have to irrigate every day then, because you should avoid that the root ball gets dry, because you can stick your finger in the root ball and stick your finger in the ground next to it. So the ground next to it can be wet and the root ball can be dry. As long as the root ball is dry, You can irrigate whatever you want, but you will never get it wet anymore. So be careful with it. But you don't have to root prune. So I will. That's very, very important that I say it. But it's something maybe to play with. It doesn't have to be. A lot of growers don't do it because they say, "Oh, it's too much work. Oh, in the summer it's too dry. Oh, I'm in sandy soil. I don't jeopardize my plant, etc." But you can play with some, and especially with the growers that have problems that say, "Well, it grows too fast here." Like here, Bailey and Thomas have seen it here. Also, we are a peaty soil. It's almost in the water. The plant, it's the natural soil that they would like. I would say so. We cut it quite severe, but also we irrigate them almost every day. So don't feel obliged that you have to root prune. It doesn't have to, but you can, especially on richer soils, you can sometimes get a much better stem quality. And sometimes it's fun to see what the plant can and what you can do with it. So that was my thing on the Ilex.
Great, thank you for that.
Then we go to the Snowberry. Again, in my top 5 of favorite shrubs that we do. Everybody knows the Snowberry, I think. It's also native in North America. Most know them as the plant. Yeah, here I know from when I was a young boy that we shoot the berries with our guns that we made from small pipes, and that those berries we will shoot them to everybody who passes. I never knew that it later on will become such a big product in our assortment. It's one of the easiest to grow shrubs, I think. It's very easy to grow. You prune it every year. You harvest it every year. It's very hardy. It's completely not sensitive to frost at springtime, etc. Disease is also not a very big problem. What is important that I would always say, never plant only one variety. Not that it doesn't work. They will produce and they will give berries, but the more plants you have, it's better to put different varieties on an area that they are quite close to each other. So work with lines or rows. Ideally, especially when you grow it on a bigger scale, that the one variety, especially the dark pink ones, so the darker pinker, the varieties are very much in demand, but they are also much further away from the original white natural species. So they need some help with pollination sometimes, and that can be done by planting them close to some planted flowers around the same time within the Snowberry region family. And then also the variety that it doesn't really have to be a white one. Most of the time they pollinate quite well, a dark or pink one with a white or a pale pink in the area. Bees do the pollination. So if you're a beekeeper or you have bees in the area, with all the berry products that we have, it's very, very good. And if you are a large scale grower, you have to actually put extra bees in it. But most of the time, most of the growers will be okay, because the Snowberry is a very attractive plant for bees. They get the nectar from it. And they are very keen on it. So most of the time you have such an amount of berries, of such amount of bees in it, that you don't have to worry about that. I think most of the, here you see some of the varieties. Farmer Bailey also has a lot of possibilities within the range of Kolster's Snowberries. There's something for everybody with it. I personally like a very nice pure white one, but also a very dark pink one, and some of the ones in the middle. But in general, we see that the market is the last couple of years pretty much into the real dark ones. But you will need some of the white ones as well. And also we have seen that every now and then, a couple of years, the market changes, then they want white late, and then the pink is less in demand. So most of the growers, they have both. They have about 50-50, but I must say in general, I think 60% of the market is pink at the moment. So white is easier to grow. Produces also, most of the time, the whites produce a little bit more stems. So, but doesn't have to, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that the pink ones are very difficult to grow. It's just they are, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit less production most of the time. But it's still, with the improvement that we've done over the last couple of years, we see that even the production of the dark ones is getting really into the white range as well. So yeah.
Well, I've seen your fields of these, and I don't think there were any that weren't bearing plenty of stems, so I wouldn't worry about not having enough to cut. Just look at those. Yeah, I've grown these myself. So easy, so productive. Just cut them every year. They flower on new growth, correct? So you don't have to worry about.
We always say, well, you can harvest actually almost every stem before the winter. So everything you can sell or you find attractive, just take it out. For the pink ones, my advice would be stems you don't use, bended, curved, ugly stems. Leave some, especially in an area where it can get some colder. You see that they sometimes just produce the next year a little bit better when you leave some of the stems on it. And after the winter, here it's mostly in March, but depending where you are, you cut everything back and fertilize them and etc. And then they do the job again. The larger scale growers, like the one that you see on the picture, they most of the time they harvest the whole plant at once. So they cut down row by row by row. But the smaller growers sometimes get the first flushes out of it, and then they will come back later on for the last. But most of the varieties nowadays, we see that they have quite a very equal production on the plant, so they produce all around the same time. Doesn't matter that doesn't mean that you have to harvest the plant all in 1 week. Most of the time you have 2 to 3 weeks per variety. But the earlier the variety is, so the more in the summertime they produce, it can be a bit shorter. But most of the time it's between 2 and 4 weeks. But at least 2-3 weeks you will have per variety to harvest. Any tricks or things that I can tell you is that also calcium can help with preventing the berries to burst or to damage, so that makes the skin harder. So again, calcium, it's the trick that we learned from fruit growers. It's making the skin of berries harder and stronger. A very important thing is that when you harvest those stems, be careful with it, because you don't see the bruises, etc., on the berries. If, for example, you harvest them, you smash them on the table, even when you do it not so hard, but the bruises the next day are very much visible because it turns to a black or brown spot. So handle them with care, especially when you harvest a bit more ripe. When you harvest more in the early stage, then the berries are much harder, stronger, I must say, than later on in the season, because then the water is getting making them bigger, and then they are more vulnerable. So that's a very important thing. Other things are that your biggest enemy when you grow snowberries, your biggest enemy when you grow snowberries is hail. You can't do much about it. Yeah, if you are an area that is very much a hail sensitive area, then you can put maybe hail nets or above it. But hail is most of the time when you have severe hail, then that harvest is done, because it might look quite okay, and then the next day you come back and then you see that the small dots are big dots and the damage is done. But that's obviously when they are on this stage. Of course, when they are in the summer and there's no berries on it, then the hail is doing maybe some holes in the foliage, but that's it. But in this stage, they are susceptible for I think that's the berry crop with the most a problematic berry for hail. But yeah, luckily most areas I don't think that you have hail every now and then. But if you are in that area, make sure that this can happen then, or
Great.
be aware that this can happen.
So when you obviously harvest when the berries are ripe or just before they ripen, they're a fruit, so it makes sense that they would bruise if they're treated with rough treatment. I think this is great for a local grower because they can take them directly from the field to their customer without all of the damage and transport. I know when I used to work as a floral designer, I would sometimes order Snowberry, usually from Holland. It was okay. You'd have a few damaged berries. When I get it from California, it was so beaten up that you often couldn't use it. So this is a real advantage if you are supplying your local floral designers. So after you harvest, do you need to go back and prune your field, or is harvesting pruning?
Some growers they especially when they cut on a larger scale, like on this field, they would cut the whole plant at once. And there's especially with this white one, you can easily cut the whole plant, leave nothing, and the pruning is done. Yeah, it's possible. For example, the more premium ones like Magical Temptation, etc., that I would recommend to leave some stems on it. But most of the time, those varieties already have some stems that are not suitable for sale, or they are a little bit bended, or they lie over the ground, and then you leave those as a buffer for the winter, and then you cut those away in March.
Perfect. So cut your best stems, sell those, leave the rest on the plant until the following spring. Just cut them as you're seeing some new growth.
Yeah.
Prune them as you see new growth in the springtime.
Yeah.
Great. Really,
Oh yeah,
really.
another thing. I don't know what the birds in some of the areas in the United States, but probably the birds will not eat the berries because I've never experienced birds eating snowberries.
Okay.
So don't worry about that. One thing is important to know that sometimes people say, well, snowberries are poisonous. They are not really poisonous, but they don't taste very well. And if you eat quite a lot of them, you will end up on the toilet for a long period, I think. But you won't die from it. But it's very important to notice that that these are not suitable for consumption. Of course, it's with all the products. So I don't know. Maybe you have to add it also on. I don't know. Sometimes you see that growers put it on the sleeves. This is for decoration and not for consumption. So Ilex, etc. This is less a product, but this one, if you eat a lot of them, probably after one you already stop because they don't taste. But it's making your belly a little bit frustrated when you eat a lot of them. Yeah.
I will make sure I don't try them.
Well, that was my presentation. I hope it wasn't too technical or too specialistic, but I try to give as much tips and tricks within the crops that we talk about. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me.
I have a few that people have been asking, so not very many, which tells me you did a really good job explaining as we went along.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me just we'll go back to the beginning. With hydrangea, there's a question about the hardiness of macrophyllus. I think we generally say roughly zone 7. The problem with them is that if you have a warm spell, you'll get some new growth coming, and then sometimes you get a frost, and that will kill the previous year's flower buds. So I think growing them in a tunnel is a really great idea. If you haven't worked in floral design, you haven't seen the price of a really nice macrophylla coming in from the Netherlands. By the time it gets to America, it's $10, $12 a stem sometimes. You can get a really premium price for these products. I think if I were starting over with a farm, I would probably build a big greenhouse, probably near New York or one of the big metropolitan centers, and just grow premium macrophyllas. You can cut them when they're fresh in the bright color. You can cut them as they start to antique or get that classical color. You can cut them even, all the way into autumn. There's always a market for them. They're such a luxurious flower when they're really grown well. So I really do like the macrophyllus. I think we can be doing a lot more with them in America. If you live in a place where you see the blue hydrangea, that's macrophylla. If you see it blooming, around people's houses, then you can succeed with these. There are others that will bloom on new wood. So even in a colder area, if you get some winter kill, you might still succeed. But if you see them really happy, the blue ones growing around you, you know that you can succeed with some of the other colors and the other varieties. Paniculatas are easy. They don't mind. I think most of us in America can grow paniculatas winter. They don't care about, like I said, -30, -40 degrees, no problem, because they bloom on the new growth. So there's just no issue. As long as they've firmed up enough, you can cut them. They change color week after week. So that was always fun for my florist. I would sort of report what colors I had that week. And then once they start to get a little bit dry, they can also be dried. We're seeing a lot of people using more dried flowers in America now. So you have a long period, just dead easy. So keep hydrangeas in mind. I think there's a big future for the local American grower. So you had a question about the clematis. When and at what size should you pinch them after you plant them? I know what we shipped were very small plants, but we were very clear that they were just a rooted cutting. You need to baby them a little bit, but at what point do you give them their first pinch, and how far back do you pinch them?
Yeah, the thing is that the plant, you must be sure that the plant's already rooted out, because it's always important to know that I was always taught that if you cut what you cut on the top of a plant, it also goes off in the ground. So if you pinch a plant, it also has its effect on the root. So make sure the plant is fully established. So, but the pinching idea is because we want to establish root shoots, ground shoots. So if you planted it and it's let's say 2 weeks in the ground, and you feel that it's real strong and it has made new roots into the ground, and it start to make a shoot, then you pinch it. So it's about 10 centimeters from the ground or something. When they start to shoot, you just take out between your 2 fingers, you take out the small shoot, and that closes it down, and it makes that it will make more shoots from the ground, which we want to have, because that makes the stronger shoots.
Yeah. So in general, when you plant something, you know that you have roots when you start to see some active growth on top. So wait until you get some vigorous growth coming. You know you've probably got some good roots forming. Then it's safe to pinch. And then once you harvest, you can cut them right back down to, almost to the ground. You'll see new shoots come out after each harvest. You can get, even in Vermont where you had a short season, I would get 2 or 3 flushes of clematis harvests, even in that cold climate. So further south, you should get even more per season. Yeah, I'm really excited about those. I know we've ordered quite a lot for next year. So if you missed out on those this year, don't worry, we've got you covered for next year. Let's see. Someone asked about how hard you can cut Cotinus. I think we talked a bit. It's going to really depend on the different approaches. So we'll go back and make sure our growing guide is really clear on which ones you can cut and at what point in the season. It's not as hard as it sounds, but when you start comparing the different types, I understand how it can be a bit confusing. So we'll make sure we clarify, make more variety-specific recommendations.
But the Cotinus, once the plant is established, you can cut it quite all at once at the right stage. But to make the difference between the varieties and what time you harvest it or cut it, it's very important, of course, and it's a bit difficult. But when you do cut the plant, doesn't matter the variety, you can cut the whole plant at once, and they will regrow. So quite strong plant.
Great. The only mistake you can make is if you're trying to have big flowers in June from the previous year's growth. You need to leave that on the plant. But if you cut it down, it will regrow. You'll be okay.
Yep.
Couple more questions about the sprinklers at night for frost, but that's just science. We will write about that and get that out to everyone. Really good tip. Really good tip for that, and really useful for a number of applications, I think. Cutting back Snowberry, we talked about.
Yeah, another thing, Bailey, another nice, I forgot to mention it. You talking about cutting back snowberries. You can also play with snowberries by pruning it back at a later time to make the harvest later. So, for example, if you have a field and you have a little bit too much, or you want to see the season longer, if the variety is not too late and you're not in an area that you grow too late, for example, once you cut everything back, things start to sprout out, and then you when they are, let's say, 15, 20 centimeters tall, you just mow them back again. So you put them behind on the others. You have to put extra fertilizer on it, but they are then also 2-3 weeks behind on the rest. They will also flower 2-3 weeks later, and you have a longer harvesting season.
Okay. So if you had an earlier fruiting variety that maybe you don't have a market at that point in the season, you could prune that back, say sometime in May or June, early June maybe, to delay its flowering. It will regrow. You will still get flowers on it, but just flowers and fruit, but they will be later. That's a really, really good tip. I think those are all the questions we have at the moment. If you have more questions, email us. If we don't know the answer, we'll reach out to Robert-Jan. We know where to find him. He can't run from us. I'm excited. We didn't talk about herbaceous perennials today, but we have a whole lot of really nice herbaceous things coming from Kolster as well. I teased you all with Hydrangea this year. I thought we had it lined up, but we didn't. It's coming from tissue culture. We have to get our order in more than a year in advance to make sure we have what we need to offer you Hydrangea. But we do have orders for Hydrangea and Eryngium already happening. Kolster also helps us with our peonies, so I'm excited. In May, Thomas and I and Felicia are going to head over to the Netherlands and hopefully see some peonies in the field and learn a little bit more about how those beautiful peony roots are produced. And every year you surprise me with something else. So I really do appreciate the work you do. You didn't mention this was your 80th, last year was your 80th anniversary of Kolster. So congratulations on such longevity in the 4th generation. But like I said, that all comes down to your passion. It's clear you all love what you do. And that's why we love working with you.
Thanks. That's from our side as well. We really like being involved in the Farmer Bailey operation. It's fun, and also the tour that you organized last year was fun to host and fun to do, and the people are very enthusiastic, and you can see that they are all plant fanatic people as well. So good questions, good people, good atmosphere. Really like it.
I think we have the best, most enthusiastic customers in the world. So thanks so much. All right, Robert-Jan, we'll see you next month. Everyone else, if you have questions, just let us know. We'll make sure you're taken care of. And thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.